This is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Carol Wright? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoy this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Carol Easterling Wright was born on April 19, 1942, in Norwalk, Connecticut. Her family moved to New York City when she was young, and then to Larchmont, New York, about an hour north of New York City. In 1964, Carol graduated from the University of Miami. She worked as a production assistant at a TV station in West Palm Beach before moving to Los Angeles and working for an animation studio called Hanna-Barbera. This company produced cartoons like the Flintstones, the Jetsons, and Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? In the early 1980s, Carol returned to Florida and worked for a Palm Beach County newspaper as a journalist. In 2003, she took a job as a media liaison for Palm Beach County. Carol retired in 2016 and lived alone in a house on Hampton Road in West Palm Beach. She had been engaged 3 times, but never married, and did not have any children. Carol had a motor vehicle, but she preferred to get around by riding her bicycle. One of her favorite trips was to a bookstore, which was 3 miles away. In order to get there, Carol crossed the Royal Park Bridge, which is a drawbridge that spans the intra-coastal waterway and connects Palm Beach and West Palm Beach. This bridge was operated and maintained by a company called Florida Drawbridges Incorporated. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On February 6, 2022, at 1:04 p.m., the police received a 911 call reporting that a woman who was crossing the Royal Park Bridge fell as the bridge was opening. When emergency responders arrived at 1:12 p.m., they found 79-year-old Carol Wright inside the concrete containment pit of the bridge. Carol had fallen 41 feet. Her bicycle was in a machinery area a few feet above her. Here's what the police found during the course of their investigation. Witnesses said they saw Carol on a moving span of the bridge as the bridge started to open. She grabbed onto the railing and screamed, "Help me, help me, help me," as the moving span continued to elevate. Right below her, there was a 2-foot opening formed by the moving and non-moving parts of the bridge as the bridge opened. A bystander tried to help her by grabbing her arm, but he had nowhere to hold on to and had to let her go to prevent falling in himself. Carol was not able to hold on to the railing any longer and fell into the opening. The bridge tender was a 43-year-old woman named Artishua LaFay Pauk, who went by the name Tisha. She closed the drawbridge after Carol fell, apparently unaware of what just happened. The police interviewed Tisha. Here is the story that she supplied to them. Tisha started her workday at 6:15 a.m. and was scheduled to 2:15 p.m. She stayed in the top level of the bridge tender tower on the south side of the bridge and opened the bridge when boat operators requested passage. Just before 1 p.m., she received a call from a boat requesting that the bridge be open. She made a verbal announcement on the loudspeaker of the bridge, warning motorists and pedestrians, and set the traffic lights to red. She stepped outside on the tower balcony multiple times to make sure that nobody was on the moving spans of the bridge. At this point, Tisha opened the bridge, allowed boat traffic to pass through it, and closed it. 10 minutes after it was closed, a man knocked on the tower door and told her that a woman had fallen off the bridge. Tisha told the police that she never saw anyone fall from the bridge. She had no idea what happened. The police reviewed video surveillance. At 12:48 p.m., Carol Wright could be seen walking alongside her bicycle westbound on the south sidewalk of the bridge. She was on her way back home from the bookstore. On the bridge, she stopped a couple of times to rest. When Carol was moving, her pace was extremely slow. At 12:59 p.m., motor vehicle traffic stopped on the bridge. At 1:01 p.m., the bridge started to open. It closed at 1:03 p.m. Tisha had opened the bridge 6 times since her shift started. The door to the tower balcony opened at 8 a.m. and 2 times around 9 a.m. During the other bridge openings, no movement could be seen on the balcony. Tisha was lying about stepping out on the balcony and checking the bridge at 1 p.m. In addition to this problem, Tisha had only logged 4 bridge openings during her shift. Again, the bridge had been open 6 times. The bridge tender supervisor was named Kathy Harper. The police discovered that she was the mother of Tisha's boyfriend. After examining Tisha's phone, they found that she had texted with Kathy at around 1 p.m. At 3:20 p.m., over 2 hours after Carol was killed, Tisha received a text message from Kathy, which read, quote, "When they talk to you, you better make blank sure you tell them you walked outside on the balcony 3 different times to make sure no one was past the gates," unquote. Kathy also indicated that Tisha should delete this message. At 3:44 p.m., Tisha sent a text message to an individual which read, quote, "I'm here with the police. I killed a lady on the bridge," unquote. On March 17, 2022, Tisha was arrested and charged with manslaughter by culpable negligence. Both she and the bridge tender supervisor, Kathy, lost their jobs, but Kathy was never charged with any crime. In July 2022, a lawsuit filed by Carol Wright's family settled for $8.2 million. Part of the settlement involves the new bridge tenders watching a 23-minute video during which family members talk about the impact of losing Carol. In January 2023, Tisha pleaded guilty to 1 count of manslaughter. She received a sentence of 8 years of probation and 200 hours of community service. One thing was for certain: Tisha was going to stay crime-free from this point forward. She was using this lenient sentence as a springboard to restart her life. There was no way she was ever going to be arrested again. In April 2023, Tisha was arrested again, this time for violating her probation. She failed a drug test and didn't pay court fines. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts in a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Artishua Paulk graduated from high school in 1997. She was married and divorced twice and had several children. Before becoming a bridge tender, she worked as a janitor, a waitress, and a home nursing aide. In early 2014, Tisha was arrested for simple battery, but the charges were dropped. She was arrested again in March of that same year following a traffic stop. She was charged in connection with possessing marijuana and cocaine, but the charges were dismissed. In 2018, she received an animal welfare citation for failing to seek medical care for her dog. The dog had a leg injury. In late 2020, Tisha was hired by Florida Drawbridges Incorporated at a rate of $10.50 an hour. She worked at a different bridge before moving to the Royal Park Bridge about a year later. Item number 2. On the day Carol was killed, Tisha had not been outside the bridge tender tower since around 9 a.m. She was opening the bridge without even stepping on the balcony and looking around to make sure the bridge was clear. The process for opening the bridge involved pressing 5 buttons in a particular order. It's not very difficult. The most important part of the job is making sure no one is on either of the moving spans. It appears as though Tisha was simply receiving phone calls to open the bridge, then hitting the buttons and hoping for the best. I guess she figured if people didn't want to die, they would get off the bridge before the moving spans elevated. There is no question that Tisha caused Carol's death, but initially she refused to accept responsibility. Tisha took the advice of her supervisor and told the police she had stepped onto the balcony multiple times. In addition, 3 days after the incident, she sent text messages to an individual saying, quote, "I didn't do it. She went under the gate," unquote, and, quote, "She dropped her phone, went forward, and fell in," unquote. So Tisha was trying to blame Carol for the tragedy, like Carol unwisely maneuvered under the gate to get her phone. This was completely untrue. Carol did nothing wrong during the incident. Item number 3. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Tisha was self-centered, lazy, irresponsible, remorseless, deceptive, and had a reckless disregard for the safety of others. On the day of the incident, she had been opening the bridge without even looking to see if anyone was on it. Being called to open the bridge was an inconvenience. She was determined to put in the minimum effort. She simply did not care. From her point of view, it was unreasonable for her employer to demand that she press 5 buttons and step out on the balcony 3 times. Carol was walking alongside her bicycle on the bridge. She was on her way home and probably did not see any need to get across the bridge quickly. Furthermore, she may have been tired. The total length of the moving spans is about 200 feet, so 100 feet per span. Carol did not realize that the spans were being elevated. The barricades had come down, but they were designed to warn people toward the outside of the moving spans, not people on them. The bridge tender should have made an announcement over the loudspeaker. Either she failed to make the announcement, or Carol did not hear it. One witness said that no announcement was made. By the time Carol realized the span that she was standing on was elevating, she was 18 feet from the non-moving span. Between her and safety, a gap was forming, which would grow to a length of 2 feet. Again, this is the gap between the moving and non-moving spans. Carol was 79 years old. She probably did not have a substantial level of physical strength. She certainly wasn't going to run and jump over the gap. That would be difficult even for a young and athletic person because they would be jumping from a moving platform onto a stationary platform. Furthermore, it would be too frightening for most people to complete. The circumstances would cause a paralyzing level of fear. Carol decided to hang on to the railing. There wasn't really any other choice available to her. After she grabbed onto the railing, her bicycle slid down into the gap. It must have been terrifying for her to watch her bicycle experience the fate that she was about to face. Carol called for help, but the only person who could have done anything was Tisha, and she wasn't paying attention. Sadly, this incident occurred right next to the bridge tender tower. Tisha was only a few feet away from where Carol was facing a nightmare, yet couldn't be bothered to pay attention. It may have been possible for Carol to survive if she could have put her foot into one of the vertical supports on the railing. Essentially, as the span elevated, she could have stood straight up on the railing. The vertical support would now be horizontal. There are several possible reasons why Carol didn't think of this. She was too frightened to think of it. She was physically unable to get her foot onto the railing, or she didn't really understand what was happening, like she did not realize which way the span was moving. No one prepares for this type of scenario. Carol never would have guessed that the bridge would open as she was trying to cross. Carol's arms simply weren't strong enough to hang onto the railing, and she slid down the span. She went through the 2-foot opening and plummeted to the concrete below. When Tisha was alerted about the incident, she knew that she was responsible for Carol's death, but her first instinct was to lie. Sadly, this was her supervisor's first instinct as well. Tisha pretended that she did her job properly, then blamed Carol. Only later did she accept responsibility. Despite her bad behavior, Tisha was offered a great deal by the state. Instead of taking that mercy as an opportunity to rebuild her life, she violated probation. Tisha was not able to close the gap between her recklessness and being a productive member of society. Those are my thoughts in the case of Carol Wright. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.